Hello everyone, Grandpa Ron here again. Hope you're all having a great day and everybody's well and happy. We're going to continue our very basic Bible study in Genesis, and today we're going to look at chapter 14 of Genesis. I'm going to jump right into it and ask your forgiveness in advance for butchering the names that we're going to see in the opening verses of chapter 14. But I'll do the best I can. I know you'll forgive me. Verse 1. And it came about in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goim, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. I told you I'd butcher them pretty good, but we got through it. But anyway, we've got some kings that are going to war against some other kings. That's the main thing we need to remember. Verse 3. All these came as allies to the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but the 13th year they rebelled. So you have one king, we'll call him Cheddar, and he has been ruling over all these other kings, and we've got a group now that are rebelling against him. And in the 14th year of Cheddar, and the kings that were with him came and defeated the Rephaim, the Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzim in Ham, and the Emim in Shaveh Kiriathaim, and the Horites and their Mount Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. We won't go into where all this is, but it's all in the promised land that God has promised to Abram as some future date. But these are different kings in those different areas of that land. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and conquered all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who lived in Hazazon Tamar. And the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, came out, and they arrayed for battle against them in the valley of Siddim, against Cheddar, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goim, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. So we've got one group that's been going around bringing his territories under control, and now he's going to go after the ones that have rebelled. Yeah. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and they fell into them. But those who survived fled to the hill country. Then they, this would be Cheddar and all his other kings, took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food supply and departed. So this is the spoils of war. They cleaned them out. And they also took Lot, Abram's nephew, and his possessions and departed, for he was living in Sodom. So Lot and his possessions and family and people that served him basically are collateral damage, the price they have to pay for not separating themselves from these other kings, but living in that area. And so Lot and all of his stuff and people are carried away. Verse 13. Then a fugitive came and told Abram the Hebrew, Now this is the first time the term Hebrew is used, just a point of interest. Now he was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Abner, and these were allies with Abram. So they were allowing him to live in this area. You know, God had promised this land to him, but there are a lot of other peoples in the land. So Abram was having to coexist at this point. And these people were letting him live in proximity to them and were actually his allies. Verse 14, and when Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he led out his trained men born of his house, 318, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. 318, that's a pretty good number, which indicates how many people he actually had working for him and in his actual clan. There have been many, many, many more than that, but he was able to spare 318 to be specially trained. And so he's going to take them, or he takes them up and pursues these armies as far as Dan, which is a very northern part of the land that had been promised to him. Verse 15, and he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. So he used some tactics here. I guess a common tactic back then I've heard is you would attack at night, chop down the tent poles, and everything would be thrown in disarray and confusion, and it was just a tremendous chaos, and he was able to take advantage of that. Verse 16, and he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his relative Lot with his possessions, and also the women and the people. So he got not only Lot and his people, but it appears here that he got all the goods from these other kings as well, and he's bringing it back. Verse 17, then after his return from the defeat of Cheddar and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, the king's valley. So apparently the king of Sodom was one of those that had survived the tar pits and escaped to the hills and returned back to Sodom. Verse 18, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was a priest of the God Most High. So here we have a new character introduced, Melchizedek. And Melchizedek was worshipped the same God that Abram worshipped. He was a priest of the God Most High. So it's an indication that God is working not only in Abram's life, but obviously he's able to work in other people's lives around the world. The Bible in this story focuses on Abram, the Old Testament, but God's working in other people's lives. Not only that, but Melchizedek means king of righteousness, and he's the king of Salem, which is probably Jerusalem, down the road, Jerusalem. And he is actually more righteous than Abram, because we're going to read in the next verse that he blesses Abram, and Abram is going to give him possessions and a tenth of all the spoils in gratitude to God for the victory, but in appreciation of Melchizedek for helping him out, feeding him and giving him a temporary sanctuary there and blessing him. So let's, and we're going to read about Melchizedek many more times down the road in both the Old and New Testament, and his priestly function and how that relates to the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, how it relates to Christ, and but we'll just put that in our memory banks, and we'll remember that we're going to see this name again later. Verse 19, and he, Melchizedek, blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he, this is Abram, gave him 1/10 of all. So Abram knew that God had given him the victory. And it's a lesson for us today, too, to remember that it's good to have a big army. It's good to have weapons, good weapons, the best. And it's good to use good tactics. But that's not what you put your faith in. You put your faith in God to give you the victory, both spiritually and physically. And Abram did that. Verse 21, and the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give the people to me and take the goods for yourself. In other words, let me have my people back. Give me all the people, and you can have all this stuff. But Abram realizes that this would, in a sense, indebt him to this king of Sodom. And he says in verse 22, I have sworn to the Lord God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing except what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who went with me, Abner, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their share. In other words, I'm not taking anything. It's possible he's remembering back when we studied earlier about how he went to Egypt. He and his wife Sarai lied about her being his sister. It was a half lie. And a lot of bad things befell the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh found out, kicked him out. But he had already given him a lot of stuff. He had given Abram cattle and gold and silver. And I would imagine, even though it doesn't say so back in that account, that he naturally felt like Abram was in a way indebted to him, because he could claim, I made him rich. I gave him all this stuff, and look how he repaid me. But now Abram is saying, no, I'm not taking anything from you. I don't want to be indebted. I don't want you to be able to say that you made me rich. But he didn't impose his decision to do that on these other kings, his other allies that were with him. He let them choose. It doesn't say what they did, but he says, let them take their share, and in all likelihood they did. In all likelihood they did. So let's see if they left anything out. We mentioned Lot's, the price he paid for not separating from these kings in Sodom. We looked at Abram and how he had grown and has now become a force to be reckoned with, but is still trusting God. His faith is still in God. And how noble he was to go and rescue Lot and bring back Lot and his family and all his possessions and everybody that was with his clan. And we saw the introduction of Melchizedek, and we saw Abram's appreciation to God for the victory, and for his appreciation to Melchizedek for his help afterwards. So we see a whole new dimension to Abram now. Abram has some warrior qualities as well. And he was victorious over quite a few kings, and now has elevated his stature as someone who is to be reckoned with. Well, I hope you enjoyed that lesson. We're going to come back next time and look at chapter 15 and see how God renews his covenant with Abram and expands on it. In the meantime, hope you have a great day and week, and all goes well with you. God bless. See you next time. Bye-bye.